habits. You know, it was in a mass, and families were there, and at a certain point we went up, and the cardinal of Boston at the time was Cardinal Cushing. He presented us the habit, which was folded. So we received it and went into the sacristy and took off our shirt and tie and jacket and put the habit on, and we would need the collar. We learned how to do it, but the first time, you know, we had to plug everybody, you know, the collar in. But I remember when we were coming out of the sacristy, no surprise, we came out, and some music started, and you heard every mother in the audience go, you know, because we're their little boy who isn't a little boy anymore, huh? But that was kind of neat. They didn't cry when later. Okay?
Yeah.
Is that enough of an answer?
Yeah.
Are you recording or am I?
I'm recording.
Or do you record too, just to make sure we have like two pieces in the background.
I'm doing the parts of it.
Do you have any stories or heirlooms, such as like photos, clothing, or receipts that have been passed down through your family recipes?
I think, you know, when I saw the question, I somewhere have a watch. My great-grandfather, well, okay, I gotta back up. I have a story. My great-grandfather he was born in this country, and as a young man, he joined the U.S. Cavalry. This is in like the 1880s, out west, in the Indian Wars. And you've heard of there was a chief whose name was Geronimo. And my great-grandfather saw him when he was out there, probably not doing good stuff to these poor Native Americans when we study things now. But he was that as a young man. When he came back east, he was from Charlestown. Are you from Charlestown?
My dad's from Charlestown.
Hmm?
Or my grandfather's from Charlestown, and my dad grew up there. Yeah.
Charlestown down by Boston.
Oh, yeah.
Bunker Hill Monument.
I have
Yeah.
a friend there.
So when he came back, he got a job working for the Boston and Maine Railroad. So he was a trainman. In his older years, my parents and I was 2, moved into his house to take care of him and my great-grandmother. And he had a big clock, and he used to keep track of, like he had a stopwatch from working on the trains. So he was good, but I learned pretty soon. My sister is 4 years younger. My great-grandmother's name was Susanna, and she died. And my sister was given the name Susan. So guess which grandchild was the favorite of the great-grandfather? She was. I didn't make the cut. But that's all right. That's all right. So that's kind of part of heirloom, the history. My poor sister had what's known as brain aneurysm, when something bursts up here. She had 4 of them. The last one killed her. She had a terrible time. But one, she was in the Melrose Wakefield Hospital, and she had the aneurysm. My mother was sitting with her in the waiting room, and she died, but she came back. And one of the first things she said was Geronimo when she woke up, because my father, who had died, said, "You got to go back and take care of your mom." So my sister came back, and the first thing she said was Geronimo. And, you know, we know the story. We know the story that she was the favorite of the grandfather who knew the Indian Geronimo. But our family always said, they think we're a family who jumps out of planes and says, Geronimo! No, we don't do that. Okay?
Mhm.
Next question.
Alright, what hobbies and interests did you have when you were younger? Or what did you do for fun?
I don't know if I had many hobbies. I was in Cub Scouts. I didn't continue after Cub Scouts. I went to Malden Catholic, and we had to commute. I lived in Melrose, so I had to commute, and I eventually had a job when I was a senior, and I worked for the school newspaper, which I enjoyed, and then I joined the Brothers. So.
Where'd you work? Where'd you work? Where'd you work?
I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Federal Reserve, there's Federal Reserve banks around the country. They're like the banker's bank. Like if somebody gave you a check, if you got a check for $100 from someone who lives in San Francisco, you cash it in a bank in Danvers, okay? The Danvers bank wants to be reimbursed, so they have to send word through the Federal Reserve to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco to get reimbursed. So I was only there for a year. I met some nice people that I would never have met, but then I went to the Brothers. Next.
Alright. What are some of your earliest childhood memories?
I have memories because we had moved in with my great-grandparents. Things like Thanksgiving and Christmas, it was our house where the relatives came. My mother had to do all the cooking. And so I remember that. It was a big house that we had. So we had plenty of space, but the family things, I remember that. Ask a question again.
What are some of your earliest childhood memories?
Yeah, it would be things like that, and meeting relatives. I absolutely remember being in the back seat of the car when my mother got in carrying a baby named Susan eventually. But I didn't realize how my world was going to change. Although my sister was a good mother. She was a pain to me, but I was a pain to her, but not really, Okay, next question.
What changes have you seen in your neighborhood or community over time?
Well, I haven't lived in Melrose for 58 years, but when I go through it, there are a lot of things that are the way that they were when I was growing up. So, because Melrose hasn't changed all that much. There's some new homes, but there are always some beautiful old homes. I've lived in Danvers pretty much since 1985. When I came to Danvers, I was living up at Riken. Riken Building is the Center for the Arts. Some of us lived there because we didn't have our own residence. So I lived there, and I had to cross the street to get to Benjamin Hall. I did some guidance. I taught some religion, and then I went to West Virginia and became a principal of a grade school. The only school experience I had with girls. It was a small school where our brothers had taught in the early part of the century. And when I wore mine, they say, I recognize that, the habit. And one of the brothers who taught at MC when I was a kid, that I didn't have, his name was Brother James. His first teaching assignment was in West Virginia, and he loved it. He said people were terrific. And then, I lived with them 40 years later. I don't know, did I get lost in the question again?
Do you want me to re-ask it?
Yeah, you better.
Alright, what changes have you seen in your neighborhood or
changes,
community
yeah.
over time?
Well, certainly, transportation is one of the things. We didn't have a car until I was maybe 8 or 9, and that was a used car my dad got. He worked in a warehouse. Now cars are kind of everywhere. The brothers, we didn't go out much. So like there was, when I was a kid in Malden, the school was small. There were 10 brothers. and they had one car. But they didn't go much. They walked to school in Malden, and the older ones would use the car. But now they're, cars are a main part of our world. And then, of course, transportation. I remember I asked for Christmas one year to have a typewriter. And it was not an electric typewriter, it was just a little portable. And I thought it was terrific. I didn't learn how to, I had to teach myself how to type. But over time, having all this stuff, and I gotta tell you, I like it, but there are times I hate it. When I was trying to do something this morning, and I was all set, and you see what this is? This is a finger that pressed the wrong button. And I lost the whole thing. I was good, I didn't say anything. I thought about it, but I didn't say anything. But so, the frustration, you know what that means.
Yeah.
Okay. Next.
Alright, what lessons has your work life taught you?
Okay, I'll go over my work life. I was a year working in the bank. I didn't get paid very well, but I worked in the bank, and I had to do things, and I learned how to do things. We had a beginning of a computerized system with checks. I learned how to do that. Doesn't do me any good with this, but there was that. When I started teaching, all of us young brothers had a religion class. I had a sophomore religion class. I was a language major, so I had a sophomore religion. I had 3 classes of French 2, and I taught German 1 in Malden. I liked it. So I was busy, and I was in charge of the school newspaper. I had been with the school newspaper as a kid, and so I continued it as a young brother. And I liked doing that. I helped out with the student council. We all prefected dances and things. One time I was in we had a dance cafeteria, and I was assigned a door, and it was as hot as hell. So I had the door open, but I stood right there, and a couple of kids came over and said, brother, we don't have our ID cards. Will you let us in? I said, oh, okay. Who are your teachers? Oh, we have Brother Robert for religion. Hello. They would kind of get away with it. Sorry. But anyway, it was busy. I had, except for, I guess for the German classes, I had 30-something kids in class, which was okay. I was pleasantly surprised that discipline was manageable. I never had any problems. I was kind of timid as a kid, but I didn't stay that way. So, keeping busy. I was an assistant principal later in Malden for a few years, so I think I had A class and did, supervising teachers and so forth. I was an assistant athletic director for a year in Malden. Basically, that meant I was in charge of, I had to go to all the hockey games to make sure everybody behaved, which they did. Then I went to a school in Connecticut. I had a similar kind of teaching schedule, and then I was an assistant there. Then I came to the prep and did guidance and religion. I had religion in Xavier. Do you have any classes in Xavier?
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, when I first came, I had a class in Xavier on, I don't know, the 2nd or 3rd floor. And in the winter, I wore my habit. I also wore my winter coat because, the wind was going right between the bricks because they needed to do the building. And I used to tell kids, we had a rule, no hats in the building. That probably still works, huh? But I used to say, put on your hats, guys. It's too cold. So, but that was busy. And during free time, you know, showing up for events, you know, I like to show up, and sometimes I pay more attention to, you know, conversations with people around. You do that too. Oh, did we just score? But I was back in the area, you know, my father had retired. It was okay for a good number of years. And then later on, my father died when I was here at the prep as an assistant principal, which I liked. I liked it a lot. I worked with freshmen, sophomores for academic kinds of things. So I knew a lot of kids. By the time they graduated, you know, I had seen them, you know, start to shave and start to stop shaving because they wanted not to shave anymore. But that was great. When I was principal in West Virginia, school was pretty easy for me. It was small. It was nice having the girls, because I never had any experience working with them. When I was leaving, I didn't stay. I only stayed 2 years, because even though the brothers gave me permission to go and to live by myself, it didn't work for me. My heart was here in New England. So when I decided I couldn't stay anymore, I used to get company. My parents came each year. I had different brothers come to see me. But basically I lived alone. People were nice. They'd say, "Brother, come anytime." Well, I can't go to somebody's house unless they say, you know, "Come on Saturday at 3, I can do that. So when I decided I had to leave, I went to all the classes, because I didn't want kids to think that they had done anything wrong, because they didn't. But I asked if they had any questions, and I remember a sophomore girl asked me, what did I think of the difference having girls in the building at the same time? So I said something stupid. I said, well, the corridors are nicer looking with the girls looking pretty. But then I said, I had forgotten how mean girls can be to one another. Guys can be jerks, but when it's over, it's over. So I had forgotten how hard it is, girls being girls, and even corrections. I was the only disciplinarian. Anybody who got out of line, I saw them, and generally it worked fine. I don't remember in West Virginia, but if I ever, you know, like had to really go at somebody, when it was over, it was over. You know, would shake hands, and you know, maybe he's going to go to detention for a week, but we are okay with that. You know, we are. I hope I was respectful. That would be important to me. But I remember one girl who I had to see for her behavior, and she didn't like that. I don't think I ever heard her voice again, because she was at me. I survived. So did she. I gave her a diploma. So getting involved, you know, getting to know people, getting to meet other people doing wonderful things with kids, the other teachers of the school. Most of our schools have no brothers. Prep has one. Do you know Brother Tim Paul?
Yeah.
Okay, I've known him for a long time. But he's the only one we have here. Malden, there's one. Connecticut, there are 3. Yeah. That's it. But we have Africa. That's where we have young brothers. Okay, next.
Alright, so can you tell us about an important or meaningful trip and what made it special?
Say it again.
Can you tell us about an important or meaningful trip and what made it special?
Oh, okay, trip. You know, I have been, because I was a language teacher, I was able to bring kids to Europe. And that would be, you know, generally kind of fun. You know, every once in a while, there were things that weren't so much fun. One time I had a kid, I was in Paris, and that kid lost his passport. So there were 2 of us, 2 brothers. So Brother William had to take the group, and I had the kid, and we were going to trace what he did the day before, and we actually went to a place where they had got French money. They didn't have euros then, but somebody had picked up his wallet and turned it in. He lost the cash, but he had his passport and other things. So that was kind of scary. But getting to see foreign things, as a language teacher, Paris, talking about the Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame Cathedral, there I was. That was really special, and to be able to have kids that I had in class being present, we're together. I had a kid in Connecticut I was very friendly with, and he came on my first trip to France. And we started in England, and you might not be able to quote my story, but I took a picture. We were in front of Buckingham Palace, and they have the changing of the guard and all this stuff. So I took some pictures. So I got a picture of Mike, and they have the guards on the horses. So I took a picture and I gave it to him, and I said, it's hard to tell which one's the horse's ass. I said, don't tell your mother. But his mother thought it was pretty good, pretty funny. So those kinds of things, that I was enriched and shared the enthusiasm. But another trip, I had a degree in French, my master's in French. I had a master's in private school administration, and this was 1986. I didn't have anything I needed to do for the summer. As young brothers, we used to be assigned to summer camps, which was kind of fun. But we didn't have that anymore. So as I said, I was teaching religion and doing guidance. I was prepared. So I had permission to offer the month of July to drive my parents to Florida and to make stops along the way. And so we brought a friend of my mother's, and we stopped in Pennsylvania. I had made some friends when I was going for my degree in French, so we stopped with them. I brought my mother to an infirmary. It's like a hospital nursing home. To the infirmary where the sisters who taught us in Melrose, the elderly sisters, were there. Well, there was a nun who taught my mother in the 8th grade, who was, an older lady, but we went to visit, and she was terrific. She remembered them, and she remembered stories. So, allowing my mother to do that. And we went further. We visited friends, we visited relatives. So, spending a whole month with my parents on something they couldn't do otherwise. When my parents had their 25th wedding anniversary, they flew to Bermuda. My mother was terrified. When she got back, she said she wanted to wait for them to build a bridge to get back, but they weren't going to make that bridge, so she had to fly back. But she was scared to death. So she never got on a plane again. So I got her to visit these places by driving. So that was a privilege. Next.
Alright, how is the world different now from when you were a child?
Things are very serious. There's a lot of serious things that people doing terrible things to one another, which includes not bothering with people who have needs. I'm sure one thing you hear at the prep is, so much of the world is needy. We have some Congolese brothers, Congo's in Africa, who have been in Haiti for a number of years. And Haiti is like a nut house, with danger. So we've had to move them just to keep them safe, and that kind of stuff. And, families, where people aren't being cared for, I think that's pretty tough. So I don't like that. I don't watch much TV. I read a little bit. I fall asleep, but otherwise I do okay. Next.
So guys, you have about 10 more minutes, just so you know.
Alright.
How many more minutes?
10 more.
Oh, well, I'm gonna have to invent stories.
Okay.
So when I was assistant principal, there was an English teacher.
Brother Dave just told the story about being gored by the bull Lucky, so you're going to have to go on to beat that story in Africa.
Alright, did you play any sports growing up?
God, no. No, I was a spectator. I was an assistant AD, which wasn't the same. I one time, I was in the office, and a kid came in from the football field, and he was supposed to pick up a piece of equipment. Well, I never heard of it. So I said, I have the key. We'll go look, you find it, it's yours. And we did that. That was, kind of fun. No, I never did. We're playing around, but not anything more
That's more
serious.
important.
Alright, tell me about can you tell us about your childhood friends, and are they still in your life? And if so, do you guys keep in touch?
About my childhood friends, I almost never see, or, not many around. My grammar school friends, there's one that we exchanged. He had a birthday a couple weeks ago, and I called him. I sent him a card, and I called him. But I haven't seen him. I guess when my sister died, he came to the wake, which was nice. But I just have, our worlds separated. I went to the Brothers, he went to the Air Force. He was my best friend. Ask the question again.
Can you tell us about your childhood friends? Are they still in your life? If so, how do you keep in touch?
Poorly. Poorly would be my answer. I have more friends that I met in my adulthood, whether it's from, my schoolwork, from being in, in language programs, or a program for Catholic school administration, for being an administrator. When people, I was headmaster at MC, I didn't tell you that. I left here in '99 because Malden Catholic, I knew that the headmaster was retiring, and that's where I went. That's where I met the brothers, and I think I got a life from that. So I applied to be headmaster at MC. But as I told my friends, if I don't get it, I don't get it. But I figured that, I owe the school for a fair bit. So I got it. And it was a pleasant surprise. I was there 6 years. Some things were more fun than others. We, one time our student council made a bet with the student council of Xaverian High School in Brooklyn about the Red Sox. And it was the year the Red Sox won the pennant. So they came to Malden. We were on television. Of course, I put my habit on, and we were on television, and the kids from Brooklyn came, and they went with the MC kids to a food pantry, to work together to get food for people who needed it. And plus we gave them pizza and stuff like that. That was good. And a great treat, giving diplomas to kids. Over the years I knew kids that I taught when they got their diplomas. That's nice. But to be the person giving the diploma with someone that I'd known, and we used to line them up in classrooms alphabetically, and I would go into each classroom and tell them, listen, all we ask you to do today is to walk and put out your hand. You don't have to do anything else. So I'd be up on the stage, and kids would be on the steps, so they called the name, John Jones. So John would come up, and he'd come across the stage, and they were ready to die. They'd be so nervous. So I'd shake the hand, give them the diploma, and then I had to do this, because the cameraman wanted his picture. But they were, some of the hands, you ever shake someone's hand who was kind of nervous and sweaty? So I did that. But it was kind of, to be allowed to be in that position was pretty neat. Next.
Alright, what was your first job, and how old were you when you got hired?
My first job was for a landscaping company. I started on Saturdays, hated it. Thank God I was laid off, because they had too many kids. And I was just interested in getting the money to go to driving school, which I got. So I was laid off after 3 weeks. And I was glad. But then my job at the bank, Federal Reserve Bank, I was full-time. I do take the train in from Melrose and back. And that was a real world.
How are you getting laid off like change getting
I-
a job at the bank? Like how getting fired did it change anything at all? Or
Like, did it, getting fired, like, did it, like, motivate you to do, like, to, like, work harder or anything, like, to get a new job, or?
I'm not getting your question.
like
At the bank,
or
okay?
yeah, or getting like going to college because
Oh.
like you know like for the application if you
Okay. I went straight from high school to work, okay? And then I joined the Brothers. The Brothers sent me to college and then sent me to grad school. But when I worked for the bank, yeah, I worked in a department with checks, and then I was in the department that had the high speed computer stuff. For all the good it does me, but I was only there a couple of months, and then I said goodbye. Some of your friends are abandoning ship. Don't run away. Any other questions?
Who were your role models growing up, and did you know them? And then, how big of a role did they play in your life?
I would say my dad was a role model. His father left him and his sister. He never knew his father. And his mother, they didn't have much of anything. But he worked, and he was a wonderful father, a wonderful neighbor. Just very dependable. You know, his name was Joe. And people say, just ask Joe, Joe will do it. And that's pretty important to me. Among the brothers, I had a math teacher whose name was Brother Bede, B-E-D-E, who was wonderful. You know, I had him several times in high school. He spent some years after MC. He spent some years in South Dakota on an Indian reservation, you know, working for them. Are we getting bailed out?
We only have one more question to ask, anyways.
Go ahead.
How has technology changed in your lifetime, and do you remember your first technology device, such as a radio or a phone?
I had a typewriter. I had an electric typewriter. I think there was a computer in my office in West Virginia, and I could do word stuff. I haven't progressed beyond that. I was telling them I was working on something this morning, and I was all set, and this finger pressed the wrong button. All gone.
I'm sure we could recover it for brother.
Let me show you. Pass it around. That's my parents and my sister. I'm the one in black.
Here.
Oh, that's good. Good for you. Brother, thank you so much.
Oh, it's fun.
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
They've had